series of rights with you where I'll ask you some questions, and then as it relates to the factual basis and what you're pleading guilty to, we'll start with the easier case, less charges, the 22 SC case, and then we'll move to the 21, okay? All right. Please state your true, correct legal name for the record, sir.
Tenquarius Mender.
Okay. And Mr. Mender, are you at this time taking under the influence of any alcohol, drugs, or medicine?
No.
And is there any medication that you take on a daily basis or regularly that you've not taken today that would affect your ability to understand why you're here?
No.
And Mr. Mender, how old are you and how far have you gone to school?
27. Be high school.
You completed high school? Okay. And are you able to read, write, and understand the English language?
Yes.
Sir, do you understand in indictment number 22 SC 183572, you're charged with count 1, conspiracy to violate the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, also known as RICO, and count 44, which is possession of a weapon by incarcerated individual, count 45, possession of a telecommunication device by an incarcerated individual, and count 46, a gang count of participation in criminal street gang activity. Understand you're charged with all those counts?
Yes.
And do you understand that you have the right to plead either guilty or not guilty to those charges? And if you pled not guilty or remain silent, you may receive a jury trial.
Yes.
And has your attorney, Ms. Fagan, gone over with you what would be commonly, the rights that would be commonly found in a waiver of rights form, so the rights that you're giving up by taking a guilty plea here today?
Yes.
Okay. And are you satisfied with the services that Ms. Fagan has provided you?
Yes.
And do you need any additional time to discuss any issues or questions that you have with Ms. Fagan at this point?
No.
Okay. And Ms. Fagan, do you waive formal reading of the indictment?
So waived.
Do you also waive any and all defects in the indictment, including any with respect to your client's name for the purposes of this plea or hearing?
So waived.
And Mr. Mender, has your attorney advised you of the minimum and maximum sentence for each charge that you be pleaded guilty to?
Yes.
Okay. And do you understand that you be, through the negotiations between the state and your counsel, you pleading guilty to counts 44, 45, and 46? You understand that?
Yes.
And do you understand as it relates to count 44, the possession of a weapon by an incarcerated individual, the minimum is 1 year, the maximum is 5 years?
Yes.
And as it relates to count 45, I'm having a cell phone in the jail, the minimum is 1 year, the maximum is 5 years for that too?
Yes.
And then lastly, for count 46, the street gang activity, participation in the criminal street gang activity charge or count, the minimum is 5 years, the maximum is 20 years.
Yes.
Okay. And do you have any questions at this point as it relates to the minimum maximums for any of the charges or all of the charges you've been pleaded guilty to?
No.
And do you understand, sir, that this is a negotiated plea of guilty, which means the state and your counsel, Ms. Fagan, will be recommending a joint recommendation to the court, but the court is not bound by that recommendation and can sentence you as she sees fit, in the sense that she can run each sentence for each charge you'd be pleading guilty to that doesn't merge or vacate by operation of law, consecutive or one after another.
Yes.
Okay. Do you also understand, sir, that by pleading guilty here today, it may be used to enhance sentencing on other convictions in this jurisdiction, as well as in other jurisdictions, including the federal courts?
Yes.
Do you also understand, sir, if you're not a United States citizen, a guilty plea will affect your immigration status and will result in deportation, regardless of any advice given to you by your attorney, Ms. Fagan, or anybody else?
Yes.
Do you understand that you waive any and all defenses here today by entering a plea of guilty?
Yes.
Do you also understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the following rights? I'm going to read a list of rights, okay? The right to a trial by jury, the right to remain silent and to not incriminate yourself, the right to confront witnesses against you, the right to the assistance of counsel hired by you or court appointed if you are unable to afford an attorney for the trial of your case,
Yes.
the right to presumption of innocence, the right to testify on your own behalf and to present other evidence, the right to subpoena witnesses and to compel the production of evidence, the right to have the charges against you proved beyond a reasonable doubt by the state of Georgia, and the right to appeal when convicted of these charges after a trial. Do you understand that you're waiving or giving up all of the rights I just read to you by pleading guilty here today, sir?
Yes.
And Mr. Mender, has anyone forced, threatened, or promised you anything to get you to enter a guilty plea here today?
No.
And is it your decision to waive these rights and enter a guilty plea on counts 44, 45, and 46 because you're in fact guilty, sir?
Yes.
And how do you plead to count 44 in indictment number 22 SC 183572, which is the possession of a weapon by an incarcerated individual?
Yes.
And how do you plead to count 45, which is the possession of a telecommunication or cell phone by an incarcerated individual here in the Fulton County Jail?
Yes.
And the last count that you're pleading guilty to is count 46. How do you plead to count 46, which is participation in criminal street gang activity count?
And Your Honor, and to the state, does the state oppose for the gang count of the 22 SC case to be Alford? Because ultimately in the 21 SC case, we're talking about a completely separate.
I'll leave it to the discretion of the court. It won't mess up negotiations.
And I assume that those, I don't have the indictment right here in front of me, but those are related to the possession of the weapon and possession of the cell phone.
Which I don't think was.
Yeah, I'll take that as an Alford on 46. That's
Yes,
fine.
Your Honor.
Okay, so, Mr. Mender, as it relates to count 46, are you pleading guilty under Alford because you believe it is in your best interest to do so?
Yes.
Okay. And you understand, are you aware that even if you're not admitting guilt as it relates to count 46, that this plea of guilty as it relates to that count places you in the same position as if you were convicted by a jury after trial? Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Mender, is this guilty plea freely and voluntarily given with full knowledge of the charges against you?
Yes.
And do you understand that you may only have a limited right to appeal this guilty plea conviction?
Yes.
And then, sir, do you understand that you have only 4 years from today for a felony charge to file what's called a habeas corpus petition challenging the voluntariness of this guilty plea? Do you understand that?
Yes.
Challenging anything about the constitutionality of the
Yes.
guilty plea.
Do you have any questions as it relates to that? I know Ms. Fagan has had some time to talk to you about this plea and the potential of it.
No.
Right. Do you also understand you have 30 days from today to file a direct appeal from this guilty plea or until the end of the term of the court to file a motion seeking to withdraw this guilty plea as it relates to the 22 SC case?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any questions as it relates to that, as it relates to the deadline, the timing for those two options that I just talked about?
No, I don't got no question.
Okay. Your Honor, I believe the defense counsel has the indictment, but that's my understanding. I know the state signed it. I believe the defendant is currently signed it. So what I would do is I submit it to the court as all parties have signed.
All right. And Mr. Mender, with regard to the direct appeal or the motion to withdraw, Ms. Fagan would be the one to represent you for either of those filings unless she's permitted to withdraw before the end of the term of court.